Hey everybody, it's Monday, July 20th. I'm Tony. It's your Newark City weekly Q&A. Newark City's, huh? And I've got Justin and Jen here. Uh, Jen, nice to see you. It's been a little bit, so I'm looking forward to an update. So maybe let's start with Justin. Justin, you want to just check in, remind us who you are, where you are, what the latest is, and then we'll go to Jen.
Yeah, Justin Powers, Kernville Cowork. For those I haven't spoken to in a long time, if you don't remember, Kernville is a little tiny mountain town up in the southern Sierra Nevadas. Um, and when I opened my space 2 years ago, one of the main drivers was these laptop vacationers and digital nomads. And in addition to we've got some remote workers, and the idea was that we wanted to grow the remote working scene in our town. Um, what we've been seeing lately is the even with the shutdown and with everything going on, we're about 3 hours away from LA, depending on what part of LA you're going into, and there are a lot of people wanting to leave LA, and they're wanting to find ways that they can um, continue working while they're finding a better place with a better quality of life, a better cost of living. And this place has become real popular for that. So with the case counts going up, we've made even more changes. We're requiring masks anytime you're stepping up from your desk. Our desks are super spread out right now, and we're not doing any day passes at all, only members. Um, but even with that, even the members that we do have, they're upgrading to dedicated desks. They're becoming more involved. So it it's it's an interesting time. We last time I think we had spoken, the state. No, actually, it was right before we had spoken. So right after we got off the call last time, California entered they kind of went back into a further state of shutdown. But at the same time, our county came off of the watch list because our numbers weren't quite as bad as they were. So we ended up in a weird situation where uh, we're basically kind of where we were. But yeah, we're gonna have to get we're kind of getting ready for when they tell us that office spaces have to shut down again. And we're building some outdoor space. We're kind of making sure that our members that work in those essential sectors that they're taken care of. But that's kind of what we're just kind of bracing for right now.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, that's fairly in line with kind of where I figure a conversation's going today. Thank you, Justin, for that. Then we'll go to Jen, and then we'll welcome our newcomer, John. Jen, nice to see you again. What has been going on? How is life where you are?
Life is busy. Lots going on. Haven't been able to make these calls because I briefly was restructuring my week, and Monday mornings were just were some heads down time. But all right, so highlights. We partnered with the Uninc, which is a virtual campus they provide virtual programming for co-working spaces. They actually started at Soma Vita in Austin, and so we got hooked up with them with Laura, and they do great programming centered around design thinking approach. They also have monthly cohorts, and so we folded that into our programming just to be able to offer our members more virtual stuff without putting undue burden on us. And so it's like $250 a month for us to kind of get a license essentially, and then we sell those memberships at $29 a month, and then it's just included for anyone who's above that. So that's cool. They're doing one today called like non-salesy sales or something around that, like that. I hope I didn't miss it. I've been missing appointments left and right lately, guys. No, it's at 12 p.m. It's right after this, so I got to jet right after. Okay, 1 p.m. Eastern. Anyway, so the Uninc, check it out. I have also talked to
How do you spell that?
the Uninc, INC. I'll find their website. Oh, there you go. I also have spoken to a broker who specializes in co-working spaces and architecting deals and things like that, about the possibility of working together to just work on expansion and find a landlord that wants to do a management agreement. He thinks there's a lot of potential given the direction that we want to go. There is also, he's working with somebody else in our area, so we just have to make sure that there's not a conflict of interest there. I haven't heard from him in a while, so I'm starting to feel like maybe the other space said no, we don't want you working with Day House. Thank you for asking. So if that's the case, I need to find somebody else, because I was really energized by the talk with him, and he can't be the only guy out there. And the third thing, which has taken up my life since the start of last week, is I launched a micro schools initiative in our town. So,
whoa,
yeah. So this, what we're conceptualizing here is a series of, or a framework rather, where parents in our elementary school district can either find or form an in-person supplemental micro school that will supplement whatever the district is doing from an e-learning standpoint. And we've got about 200 people that have signed up to express interest. We had 2 Zoom calls that were just brainstorming. And then we founded a working group of people to identify next stage leaderships, next steps, things like that. And we're looking at making this highly inclusive, and seeing how we can make this equitable for all students. We've got a lot of families that can just go ahead and hire a private tutor, but then there are a lot who can't. There's an interesting demographic that around here, yeah. So we're just looking at how to make that equitable. We have a lead on some funding, and it's just really, really exciting. And there's nothing an entrepreneur loves more than a new project. So. Yeah, that's what's up with me.
Yeah, well, it sounds like an important topic that a lot of people are going to be talking about, and it's germane to what kind of your original mission was about supporting parents, supporting kids. Yeah. So that's great. That's great, Jen. And I think it's also important to be embracing what your mission is as far as how it extends beyond your workspace and the other things that are kind of really relevant to what's going on now. So
yeah, because this won't just be a day house thing. I'm envisioning like 100 different pods, some meeting in houses, some meeting in dance studios, what have you. Just and we'll host one here too. But my daughter won't be going to this one because she'll come and find me.
Right. Gotcha. Cool. And I'm definitely very interested in Uninc. They came across my radar a while back, and I feel like there's a lot of value that can be provided there. And interestingly enough, I was also kind of looking at going this direction. Like, what would it look like to provide value directly to the members of member spaces in this network? So yeah, I'm curious to see how that goes. I think it's a brilliant idea. So curious to see how that goes for you and for your members if you see that they use it and they find value in it, for sure. Cool. All right, great. Welcome. And Jen, just real quick while I'm still with you, how are people handling Corona-related stuff? I mean, are people coming in? Are they using the space? How's things on that front?
Yeah, it's pretty busy here today, actually. I would say on a regular basis, we have about a quarter of our members coming in. A lot of them are in private offices. So on any given day, we have maybe like 2 or 3 hot desk members here only. And we've got like 1 really consistent dedicated desk. We sold, so we have 2 available offices, and then I'm trying to convert one of our conference rooms into an office. And we sold our middle one, our middle space. So, and they paid up front for a whole quarter. So I don't know, it's been going slow, trying to sell new memberships. But the people that are coming in, they say they feel safe, and we ask that people wear masks whenever they walk through the common areas. But if you're sitting at a desk, which has a table, that'll have a barrier around it. You don't have to wear a mask then. And then of course you don't have to wear a mask in your office or in your conference space.
Got it. Okay. All right, cool. Just kind of taking a temperature check on that. Yeah, everybody's in a different place, so it's good to get a sense of where people's heads are at. Cool. All right, let's keep it moving. I want to welcome John, and then we'll go to Penelope. John, welcome to the group. Thanks for joining. I'm excited to have some one-on-one time with you soon. But tell us about yourself. What brings you to us now? Where you are? What's going on? I still got you muted there, John. I don't think I can do it for you. Oh, there you are. You're good.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I have been kicking around this co-working space for the last couple of years. My day job, I sell contract office furniture. Have done that for a long time, and just saw the co-working spaces as a natural evolution. A lot of my customers are moving to having their people work at home and in different types of settings. My wife and I have a restaurant. We're in a very small 10,000 population community, Southwest Missouri. We have a little restaurant bar down in the basement of this building. And for the longest time, the upper floors were empty. Had a second floor that had a couple of private offices in it that people didn't want to rent because they didn't want their customers to have to walk upstairs. So we kicked around the idea of doing a co-working space to kind of help lease some office suites upstairs, help with overflow from the restaurant downstairs, and basically everything in here I sell. So it was kind of a showroom, working showroom for me. Have been able to go from the LLC that owns this building, my wife and I own. Prior to doing the co-working space, we basically had one source of income, and then prior to this COVID thing, we had 23. So we've got 100% of our space utilized. Have been catering to a number of different folks, but primarily working with the Chamber of Commerce and some of the local community college to offer services that just aren't available in the market. So came across your podcast one day and said, I'll pick on this and see what I might be able to learn from what you guys are doing. So I'm basically here just to absorb and learn. We've been open for couple of years, and during that time frame I was basically asking people what they wanted, and we were adding different things, different pieces, and have it full-blown open and ready to go. So
Wow. Well, congrats on all of that, John, and welcome again to the group. I'm curious, well, first of all, I've always loved the idea of an integration of food or restaurant bar kind of a setup and co-working kind of upstairs. I think there's just a really great interplay between the two. One of my favorite co-working spaces in Tokyo was a place called Pakchi House, and it was a 3-story building, and it was a bar, restaurant. It was a bar, it was a restaurant, and then it was co-working space on the top, and people just moved between them kind of freely, and it was just such great vibes. Really, really great. So there's a lot of fun you can have with kind of integrating, between those businesses. There's a lot we can do there. And then the furniture showroom is another no-brainer. I've talked to a few co-working spaces over the years that have done partnerships with furniture providers, either where the provider is a sponsor or they just do kind of a product exchange. Or there was 1 or 2 cases where the furniture maker actually operated the space themselves. But it just seems like such a natural fit for furniture providers and co-working spaces to work together, because co-working spaces are generating new businesses that inevitably are going to need to buy lots of furniture. So, you're kind of getting your foot in the door for those future big customers down the line. So it makes a ton of sense to me. Yeah, so we probably have a lot to learn from you on those fronts, John. I'm just curious, John, is there anything that you were hoping that you were going to be able to learn, or is there somewhere that you're looking to go next that you could use some help with or some guidance with, or is there just kind of an ambition that you have coming up?
Well, I've actually set this up. I owned a couple of contract furniture dealerships in the past, and I've set this model up to be able to offer it to contract furniture dealers to be able to sell people on. The name of our business is Hubbub. So kind of like a two-party agreement with other people who might have extra space that they don't need to be able to get in and out of a co-working space pretty quickly. And then we're also doing an app, full-blown integration app, where we provide that to the either the dealers who might want to open a co-working space to help monetize their showroom investment, or some of their customers. Some of my customers with this COVID thing, they've called me and said, hey, we no longer need this extra space over here. So, okay, well, great. Why don't we open a Hubbub location and start talking through that process with them? And when they realize they can maintain the ownership of the assets and have somebody else pay for it, it becomes a really good conversation for them. And the contract furniture dealers love it because it gives them an opportunity to go in and usually call a little higher in a major account than what they can normally just selling contract furniture. So I'm interested in growing that concept, and we'll probably be looking for feedback on how we might better accomplish that.
Great. Yeah. Well, maybe some of the folks on this call could have some questions for you to help you get a better sense of that. So
that's good.
Yeah.
But I'm just here to learn and see what's going on. So.
Yeah, great. Yeah, stay tuned. You got a great group of people here who have a lot of experience that you can learn a lot from. So welcome, John, and we'll talk more one-on-one during our meeting. Thanks. And so let's go to Penny, and then we'll dive into some of the things we brought up in this call. Penny, what's going on in your world?
I'm Penny Meckley Porter. I live in Erie, PA, and have a co-working space for psychotherapists. And what's going on in my world is I'm getting ready to move in the direction of helping others start private practice. I'm going to start small with a couple of my current members, but there's this program I've been wanting to develop, and I'm going to start with them as I'm developing the program. And then eventually offer it kind of more widely, helping people launch a private practice. And then that'll be a way of kind of feeding people into Thrive and feeding people in at the higher levels too, because when they launch a private practice, they're members at a higher level of Thrive. So it'll be feeding in members for myself.
Awesome. Very good. And how's it all going? What's next for you?
Just getting started and figuring out whether I can use a curriculum. So I've got my eye on a couple of different books that I can use, and whether I can just kind of use that or develop my own kind of curriculum as I'm going through. I'd rather keep it simple, and I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. So that's what's next for me, is figuring out what the needs are. I'll have a meeting maybe tonight or maybe Wednesday night to see what these people want in particular. I mean, I've got my ideas already, but want to see what they want. And then see how to do that.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. And what's everybody's beat on just to rewind a little bit to what Justin had brought up first? What's everybody's beat on where things are going as far as reopening and corona-related stuff? I know cases are kind of spiking all over the place. Justin said he's concerned that there may be more kind of rolling back and closure coming. For people in other parts of the country, is anybody seeing any trajectories there that they're kind of keeping an eye on?
Yeah, in the city of Chicago, at least, They are, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. In the city, they just rolled back some of the, they didn't quite slip back a phase, but they just tightened up some of the different rules. I'm sure another shutdown is coming. So I actually just did a preliminary P&L forecasting that. And it just basically involves me not paying rent and cutting my employee salary in half again.
Yeah.
So if we need to go dormant again, we will.
Right. Okay. And Penny, how about where you are?
I mean, because we are psychotherapists, we're exempt, and so we can continue to, be here. I mean, at some point we might say, okay, you can't have your clients in the office with you to the therapist. We may say that again, or we may just let each therapist make that decision on their own. But since we're exempt from that, we're considered essential. I'm not being impacted as much as everybody else is.
Well, I think a lot of co-working spaces, though, as long as you collect mail, you can be considered essential. Like we were close to the public, but we were unstaffed, but we still let our members come in. We just weren't operating at full volume.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing. People are still coming in. But I mean, so here people are still coming in, not quite as many as before, but I get the sense from just talking to everybody else that more people are coming in here. Well, plus we're pretty small. We have 26 members. It's a small co-working space. So I think we're not being as impacted as some of the other spaces are by having fewer people coming in. Plus our costs are a lot lower than some places. We have like all used furniture, you know what I mean? Like we didn't buy anything new. And so I think our overhead is lower. Our rent is lower. Our insurance is lower. So we're being impacted less than some of the larger co-working spaces.
Gotcha. And, so one of the things that I'm trying to get a handle on too is how this fits in with community building, because in my space, and I think the space that I ran operates differently from most of yours, except maybe Jen, where gatherings and event programming were such an integral part of our business model, where we made money on event rentals and external events generating revenue in other ways. And then just through community programming that members paid in large part to be able to get together and hang out with each other in person, face-to-face community programming. And so are any of you doing those kinds of gatherings in person in your spaces? How is that going? So Jen, you're shaking your head. How does that fit into the picture? I mean, how are you accounting for that side of the business?
Truthfully, it was never a big money maker anyway for us. If you look at like a per ticket sold, as far as in the abstract, how many of our members were joining in order to do those events? Honestly, not too many. They were really joining more to get away and to have serendipitous conversations with fellow members in the kitchen and things like that. This group is not as interested in the lunch and learns and the happy hours, even though we provide those because it's what co-working spaces do.
Right. And so you haven't found, I guess maybe you'll find out now, but you haven't found that those have been substantially important to improving retention.
No one quit and said, well, you guys aren't doing events anymore and that's why I joined. Nobody said that.
Right. Got it.
It was more like, I don't feel safe leaving the house. My business numbers are down. And so I have to scale back. Those were the two reasons. Yeah.
Safety and money are probably the reasons people are quitting right now, for sure. Okay. Understood. That's such an interesting situation. Okay, cool. So getting back to what you were saying, Justin, do you want to kind of just tell us a little bit more about what your situation is and what you're thinking as far as like what's going to happen next and where things are trending now?
Yeah, and just to touch on the events conversation, for us, that was always something, because we want to be leaders in our communities. That's part of our main goal. I actually hired an event coordinator right around January, February, which was fantastic timing. And so we never really got those events off the ground. We did have, I mean, we were, I think probably one of our most powerful Codivation series. We've been doing those on occasion. The Codivation series that was pretty much through the first part of the shutdown, I think, was really helpful for a lot of our members. And we actually had a lot of community members sign up that weren't using desk space. They just wanted to be part of Codivation. So, um, but then as I think there's this certain amount of Zoom fatigue, and people started dropping off of that. But one thing we are doing is in building this outdoor space. We're looking at this, International Co-working Day that's coming up, and so we were going to bring a barbecue and mark out on this patio where everybody can sit, and they're super far apart, but we can at least see each other's faces, and we can at least have conversations, and we can be outside, and try and find a way of allowing people to feel like they could safely interact with people from a distance. So that's one thing that we're working on. We'll see how, based on how that goes, we may end up doing more stuff in that outdoor space. One thing in terms of the upcoming California shutdown, I think there's something dicey going on with the numbers because our county keeps popping off and on the watch list, even though our numbers aren't really improving. But one thing we're seeing is that it's a lot less just shut everything down, and it's a lot more of okay, let's. I think the state is being a lot more. They're putting a lot more thought into how and what they're shutting down, and everything they're shutting down, they're saying only if you can't move it outdoors.
Mm.
So if we can put desks outdoors and allow people to be out there, it'll be uncomfortable because it's hot. But I already have some people that are very interested in that, regardless of what the state does. And they were also, California has a long and very specific list of essential sectors and essential employees. And I do know that several of my employees do, or several of my members do fit into those categories. But I think at this point, what I'm leaning towards is I'm going to instruct the members that, hey, we're closed for non-essential sectors. I don't know where students fall into that, so students will probably get a pass. They'll probably be able to, because we do have some students that are doing their online schooling. They have no other way of doing it, because around here you don't have a lot of internet connection outside in a lot of places. And I think I'm just going to let them certify for themselves and decide for themselves that they're one of those, if they fit into one of those buckets or one of those categories. Everybody has, we don't have to be staffed. Everybody has access to get into the doors. They have access to open up and shut down. And everybody's fully aware of how to do that. So I think we're basically going to be kind of going into hibernation mode, with the exception of maybe trying to pump up some of these online events a little bit more.
Gotcha. Yeah, but maybe that would be a time to start investing more again and trying to get the engagement up of those kind of Codivation-y cohorts or whatever else you can do that would kind of vibe with where people are headed. So yeah, that makes sense. How does that affect you in terms of the business model? I mean, obviously this is difficult.
It's really weird, honestly, because like my wife went down to Costco and she's like, oh, I should get a couple more of these, nice sit stand desks that we're using for our dedicated desks. I'm like, no, I don't think that's a good idea, with everything happening. And then as of this morning, like all of them got like, people keep upgrading and getting the dedicated desks. And so I think my members because most of them don't have any other option, like their living situations where they're at, they don't have the internet access that they need to be able to work. I think they're just very loyal, and I think they're going to continue coming in, and even if it's just dedicated desk members, which it may end up being throughout the week, all of our dedicated desks are so far apart that it's almost like having a private office. So I'm actually probably in a better place from a business model perspective right now, even if we do go into hibernation mode, than I probably was last year at this time. So I'm probably the exception right now to most spaces, to be honest. And it's probably mostly geography. If I was in a much more populated area with much better infrastructure, I think people would be staying out of the co-working space a lot more.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, what I'm hearing is that everybody's in kind of like nobody's in a place where they have like urgent problems they're trying to deal with. Everyone's working on kind of proactively investing in their next thing. Obviously, your shutdown, Justin, is a problem, but not as much of an existential threat as we might be afraid that it would be. I am loving what I'm hearing from Jen and Penny in terms of their programs that don't involve direct, kind of work in the physical space, diversifying kind of where your energy is going, which I think is healthy. And actually, kind of hearing bits of that for you, John and Justin, as well. So cool, neat. I know I'm still kind of concerned about the health concerns and indoor physical offices being a place where we have to be very careful. Hopeful that all of you kind of are able to stay safe and everybody's able to kind of navigate all of this, but certainly we'll work through that as it comes. But that leaves just where we're at now, and I'm not hearing like super burning questions. Does anybody have anything they want to dig into more? Jen, do you want to tell us maybe a little bit more about your experience with the Uninc so far, and what your initial impressions are?
Sure. I first of all, the owners, Liz and Ben, are really wonderful people. Sorry, just gotta put this on the floor. A lot of their programs are based on design thinking, which I had not been exposed to previously, but I found really helpful actually in launching this micro school initiative, and rallying the troops around that. So that's where it's 5 stages, and you work through a concept. I can't remember all the stages, but it's like empathize, prototype, test. I don't remember, but anyway, yeah. Really interesting. And they've exploded in the past few months. They kind of started with just doing in-person events, I think at Soma Vida, and then they opened it up to virtual earlier this year. And now this coronavirus has fallen in their laps, so they're really growing. But basically, you can sign your co-working space up, and then your co-working space essentially becomes what they call a campus. They provide a lot of support for marketing. They're still kind of figuring things out, so we're looking forward to that becoming a little bit more robust on their end. But yeah, so far we really like them. We've liked working with them. I was on one call. Oh, I should tell you guys about this. I was on one call with them and had a revelation that I feel like saved me years of therapy. Is this sounding familiar? Okay, all right, I'll be quick. But there was a prompt, and the session was about how to use Uninc, but they decided to do a journal prompt anyway. And they said, the question was, why did you decide to become an entrepreneur? And then they put on some nice music, and you're supposed to journal about that. And I just wrote down 2 sentences, and that was it. And it just came out of nowhere. And I said, because I had a solution to a problem, and I've never been afraid to blaze my own path. And I wrote that, and I was like, boom, because I've been struggling a little bit with just a little bit of feeling like an outsider in my community. With I'll go to a school event, and it seems like all the other moms like texted each other before coming and like, grabbed dinner beforehand. And I was like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to text people before coming to the park. I just came to the park. Is this what people do? I don't know. If I see something, I just go and I do it. And I realized that being unafraid to blaze my own path and just go for things is just who I am. And that's probably who a lot of entrepreneurs are. And sometimes that's a lonely road, but that's why we do the things we do. So anyway, that alone made Uninc worth it.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. So you actually found there to be a tremendous value for you personally before you even got it to the members. And that was through both the design thinking kind of methodology and then also the prompt that you did for yourself.
Yeah. That prompt has really served me well the past month or so.
Wow. And
I just wanted to say that probably a lot of the other people who are going to those events are uncomfortable going alone. And so that's why they coordinate ahead of time. But you're willing to just show up, and they're probably not.
Yeah. And I think that's just the entrepreneurial makeup. You're not afraid. You just go for it.
That's right. You got to be in this world for sure. Yeah. Cool. Well, who has something that they want to talk about? I feel like we've kind of touched on everything, but I don't know that we've hooked into something really burning for anybody. Is there anything we want to dive deeper into we've already talked about, or totally new topic? And John, I'd say I would kind of like extend an extra offer to you just as a newcomer, that if there's like an area of this world of co-working that you're curious about, a particular component of the bigger picture. I don't know how much you know about my background, but I've been in the co-working world since 2007, and I've got a bunch of experience talking with, consulting with a bunch of people on it. About the biggest fan of co-working you will find anywhere on the planet. So if anybody has any questions about co-working in general, I'm happy to answer it. And I will actually answer one question that may be on some folks' minds based on what Justin said, which is about Co-working Day, which is going to be on August 9th. I believe it's a Sunday this year. It's the anniversary of when the first co-working space, the first co-working community was started. It was started by this guy, Brad Newberg, in San Francisco, and he wrote a blog post kind of explaining what co-working is, and then that led to a conversation with other people who liked the idea, and Brad basically supported the idea of people copying co-working and being able to do it anywhere, and that led to a global movement. Basically, there was an online discussion group, there was a wiki, there was a blog. All these things are still online at the website that I just sent you. But the reason we all use the word co-working today is because the folks who started it open sourced it and facilitated an online community where everybody could kind of copy the idea and run with it. So August 9th became the day of the year when we celebrate the founding of co-working and the fact that it's a global movement that we all get to be a part of. And so there are events that take place on that day, celebrations, so we use the hashtag Co-working Day for coordinating activities on that, and I definitely recommend checking it out. At the link that I sent you, I believe there is kind of an archive of activities and social media posts that people have used in the past, as well as some free design assets that I created that you can download as well. So if you're looking for inspiration and looking for an excuse to celebrate, I highly recommend checking it out. Any questions on that? And then I know we got questions from Jen and Justin that we can jump into, but anybody have any questions about Co-working Day before we do that? Okay, cool. Jen, you went first, so what's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm interested to know if you have any leads on other brokers who specialize in working with co-working spaces. The guy I was talking to is in Dallas, but knows the Chicago area pretty well. And if you can't answer that right now, that's okay.
Yeah. Brokers. Not off the top of my head. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. You know, I would think that there's probably somebody within my reach if we were to like cast something out there, but I'm guessing you're looking for something a little more personal, a more personal connection.
I mean, not necessarily, you know, someone that you know that knows someone is good enough for me. That's how I found this other guy.
Right. Okay. I'll give it a think. Yeah. I'll let you know if somebody comes to mind.
And if I know I haven't been on in a few weeks, if you didn't previously tell us about how your camp chair thing went, I'd be interested to hear.
Sure. Well, I haven't done it yet. I was going to do it last week, but encountered a longer conversation around safety that caused me to want to pause on it a little bit. It's really fascinating how people are landing at different points on the spectrum around safety related conversations. And sometimes I feel like I'm not on the extreme end, but I'm on the pretty far end of being safety oriented around this. But then I'll do something like say, hey, let's do a totally socially distanced, masked on outdoor co-working session for a small group of people, which in my mind is utterly safe. And then I get a fair number of people who tell me they don't feel comfortable with that. And it's just, you know, people are spooked. People know people who have died of this thing, and people know a lot of stories of people who have gotten sick from even very, very brief encounters. And so, you know, the main thing really in my mind isn't as much the reality of what's going on, and in part because we still have so much uncertainty about exactly what's safe and what isn't. But it's more of a communication challenge to say, okay, we've got a group of people and they all are going to have a different perspective on topic X. And in order for us to engage this community, we have to account for the fact that people are going to have very different views. And some people might have very strong feelings about their views and about the views that other people hold if those views are in conflict, because it concerns the safety of them and their families. And so recognizing that fact, how do I account for it as somebody who wants to organize these people in community? And so what I realized was that while I had thought it through when I sent the email out to my contacts, I didn't necessarily communicate in the most clear terms the extent to which I had thought it through before sending the email, which was one thing. Which, Jen, I know you can resonate a little bit with that. And then the other thing was maybe the more ideal scenario would be for me to have started the conversation with, hey, I'm curious where you guys are at as far as this. I'm not proposing anything yet. I'm simply curious where everybody's head is at. And then I can get people's responses, and then I can factor that into the language of what I propose after the fact. And so, you know, probably the more ideal approach would have been, hey, I'm curious about this area of like outdoor co-working. What do you all think? People respond. And then I say, okay, I've listened to what you've said. And now I think there's a safe way to do this that most of us would feel comfortable with. And if you don't feel comfortable with it, that's totally cool. But it sounds like, based on my own feelings and the feelings of the people in the group, this is probably safe. If you don't want to go, totally cool. But those of you who have voiced your opinion about discomfort around these areas, I've thought about that. I've researched it. I've taken it into account. Here's what we're going to do. So I did fine. It wasn't like we had like a mega flame war, but like there was just a little bit of cautioning of, you know, people who feel that it's not yet advisable to gather in any capacity. You know, and I think that's in part because even something like an outdoor co-working thing, where like for me, I go outside this apartment and I'm in a park, which is great, no problem. But I still have to use a restroom. So do I come back to this apartment? Do I use a public restroom? You know, and if I've got a group of people, are they using that public restroom? You know, there's a lot of like kind of little details and encounters and things that some people are more concerned about than others. And then the other thing that people are taking into account is the fact that we have to kind of think one or two steps ahead. So for example, this past weekend, I visited my girlfriend's family, and they have little kids, and they're super kind of careful about who they bring into their fold. And so I had to think about who I was interacting with leading up to interacting with them because of their concerns about where I've been, which is completely understandable, right? So a lot of times, like I had one guy tell me like, yeah, I wouldn't feel up for it. And I said, and I was close enough with him. And I said, would you mind telling me why? And he said, well, to be honest, I wouldn't mind it, but my wife doesn't want me to do it. She doesn't feel comfortable with it. And she could have her own reasons because of maybe she has somebody at risk in her life, right? So there's just a lot of communication dynamics at play. But what I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking of still doing it anyway, just with a little bit more communication. But I'm also thinking of doing some kind of a virtual version where we still go outside, we still go in our camp chair, and maybe we do kind of like little nature breaks where we go for a walk. You know, we pack up our camp chair, we walk around and like just post our observations of what we're finding, but let people kind of self-identify where they go. And if people end up wanting to gather in the same place, then so be it. Because I'm finding even in New York City, it's tricky where I emailed a bunch of my friends. A lot of them have left New York, which is one thing. But then even the ones that are here, we're not taking mass transit. So all of a sudden the geography of this very big city becomes a real issue where, you know, I have friends in Brooklyn where like, I'm just not going to see them for a while, you know? And I happen to have access to a car now for the most part, but most New Yorkers don't. People are lined up down the street outside of car rental agencies over the weekend. It's crazy. Anyway, so that's a longer answer to your question, Jen, but it's something I'm still investigating. And I want to do more experimenting with, you know, socially distanced social gatherings, safe social gatherings, that kind of thing. I've just had to pull back a little bit and reassess.
Seeing a lot of parallels between that discussion and our micro school discussion, and just polling people, polling people, taking their temperature for things, and then presenting a plan. You know, just kind of throwing out the, what do you guys think about this? Let's just talk with no expectations, but having some core values. Having some core values really saved my ass from criticism. Let me tell you that.
Oh my goodness! Please tell me more about that. That's so important. And you know, I'm a core value nerd. So,
I submitted a link in the chat, and if you clicked on that, and then you'll kind of scroll down just a little bit. We've got 4 core values, and just being able to establish those up front and being like, this is the container with which we'll have this conversation. It's so that these are things that are not up for debate. You know, these micro schools are going to be supplemental to what our district is doing. This has to be inclusive. This is not just for the rich kids. We have to figure out a way to make this equitable for everybody, and more importantly, how to fold them in to help us design this. This is not going to be white saviorship or rich people saviorship. So that's a non-negotiable. And then the flexible, you know, we're going to roll with the punches. And then I don't have the link up. What was the 4th? Open source. That we're creating a framework. We are not establishing these micro schools. We're creating the framework and then enabling people to either find or form one. Anyway, I know that's not exactly what you're doing, but just having those core values. And it was just like, if you don't align with these core values, then you know, keep scrolling.
Yeah.
My troll has popped back up in my life, you know, criticizing this movement and kind of starting one on her own. And it's really funny because people are just saying, well, no, because look at these core values. This is what they're all about. This group. So, man, I'm so glad we did that.
I'm really glad too. And I think it's a great kind of mini encapsulation of the importance of core values. And these particular ones are really important where, you know, you're talking about micro schools. One of the immediate questions and potential controversies is, are you trying to replace schools? So immediately you first and foremost, you're saying supplemental. So there's no question about it whatsoever. Everybody's on the same page immediately. And I think that so setting core values, I think, should be required reading for every co-working space, every community in general, because it heads off a lot of problems in the future, and it attracts people who will reinforce the kind of culture that you want. And it doesn't do everything on its own, right? Like a core values aren't going to suddenly make great culture by themselves, but they certainly lay a really, really important foundation. And the specific example you're using here with these, you're calling them guiding principles on this page, I think is just super important. And then, zooming back out to co-working, even non-COVID related conversations around core values, it helps you when you are trying to make an important decision, that you can have these established and you can go to your community and to your team when you have to make a decision about how to proceed. And certainly whether to reopen your co-working space, how to reopen, how to deal with safety procedures, this is when core values are really important, especially if you're going to have something like, maybe you have a certain mask policy, and if you have somebody in the space who thinks this is all a hoax and they don't want to wear a mask, whatever, you can say, look, like, I understand everybody's entitled to their opinion, but we've agreed that we need to all work together on a certain protocol for safety that everyone has agreed that they're going to buy into. So like, we all need to figure out how to work together on this, and not everybody's going to get exactly their way. So let's find their way. But outside of COVID, like, we came into this with when we would have opportunities where, let's say, a potential customer came in and our numbers were down, and they wanted to take like 15 desks, and we only have like 55, 56 desks, so 5,000 square feet. So they wanted to take like a sizable chunk, and the company wasn't in alignment with what we set out to do in terms of building a community space for independent professionals. And our numbers weren't great. We were maybe bleeding money, and the money, the bottom line guy in me is thinking, gosh, I could really use this cash, 15 desks in one shot. Man, this would be great. But if I take it and these guys aren't a good culture fit, that could end up costing me more than it makes me if it drives out the people that I actually built this business for. And so what I can then do is essentially, first of all, approach that business conversation through that lens to say, okay, if these guys are going to be a possibility, I got to really get to know this owner. I got to really understand their culture. I have to see if these guys are going to play ball or not, if they're going to really get along with our membership or not. And use that, talk it over with my team, get their vibe, and maybe talk it over with my community and get their vibe. And we ran into this with other things too, where, like, for example, somebody wanted to rent out our space for an event, but they needed to start moving in and taking over the space at like 5 o'clock or something, which New Yorkers work past 5 o'clock. So it would be a disruption, and so we had to talk over that. Or even like somebody renting the conference room for several days, and we had like one big conference room, and it was going to be a disruption. So things like that, where you can kind of say, okay, is this in alignment with my values? How do I make the hard call as far as these things? It's nice to be able to have those things documented. And yeah, other more nuanced things. But yeah, Jen, I'm glad you brought that up, and I think it's a good exercise for all of us to do, for sure.
I liken it to picking a theme for a party. If you have strong core values, it's not like you're going to throw a party and eat lasagna and drink sake and listen to mariachi. Like, then it's just going to be a big mess.
Like, all those things are wonderful, but not together. Yeah, and actually, I love the imagery of that, because it's a good way of explaining the importance of values without it sounding like heady woo-woo kind of stuff, where it's just look, you wouldn't have all of those delicious flavors at the same time. It just it wouldn't serve any of the flavors to have all the flavors. Mm-hmm. And cool. Well, I'm glad that you're glad that you're finding value in that already. I think that's a great example. Yeah. Does anybody else have core values or questions about it? Justin, you got, yeah.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that was something that we started out right away, and I'm a huge, in fact, one of my kind of go-tos if I'm giving a talk or something is to talk about vision and values. Something I got a lot from when I was working at Salesforce. But yeah, our values were around building a community um, around our students, and that was kind of a, you know, there's several parts of that, and then creating this destination for remote workers and entrepreneurs and whatnot. Um, yeah, that's something that it makes a lot of decisions a lot easier. I can't preach that one enough. When you've got a filter through which to pass all of these decisions, it really does make a lot of things, a lot of decisions a lot easier, especially when it comes time to make the really hard ones. Like, shoot, we have to close our doors, we have to go into hibernation. What's that going to look like? You know, the business side of me is going to come up with a much different decision than the value side of me, and the value side always seems to work out better.
Mm, yeah, yeah, exactly. And, you know, it speaks to actually what I mentioned a little bit earlier about the global co-working movement. The movement itself has core values. You can see that at coworking.org, the parent site to the site that I sent you. See you, Penny. Um, and those core values helped to make co-working something that could go global and have a shared sense of identity that has certainly been co-opted by the office rental industry, but hasn't been completely replaced or consumed by it. And so, you know, I've been a big fan of core values because I've seen how it served the co-working movement for sure. And actually, one of the things we haven't talked about this at all, and I'm really interested in it, is while the co-working movement has core values, there are so many other components to a really great decentralized movement that can also be espoused by a local community. So in 12-step groups, for example, they have 12 steps, which is the recovery 12 steps, but then there's the 12 traditions, which is how the Alcoholics Anonymous um, entity, it's not even really an entity, but how it's able to scale to a global thing that's decentralized that anybody can run anywhere without falling apart. And it talks about how basically nobody speaks on behalf of the organization, and it only collects money for its expenses, and yeah, anonymity is important. So basically, it has this kind of self-healing mechanism to kind of keep it in place. And I think that there's more that we can learn in community organizations around not just having core values, but perhaps also other core activities or core guiding principles of like actions that we tend towards. Examples of things. If you guys are familiar with, this is getting like way off track now, but I'm going to share it anyway because it's cool. A lot of the early co-working people were really into this thing called the Clue Train Manifesto, which is a book that was written in 1999. You can get it for free online on the internet. And it basically predicted social media like at least 5-6 years before social media happened. But it
What's it
talked
called?
about how the Clue Train Manifesto, it talked about how people on the internet talk to each other and you can't just broadcast to them. And so if you want to continue to succeed in business, you have to deal with the fact that your customers are in charge now and that they're going to talk to each other about you, and you can't just broadcast advertise your way into getting people to believe what you want them to believe. And anyway, they talk a lot about kind of these kind of principles and tendencies of like the philosophy of their thinking. But for one example, I thought it was in that book, but maybe not. They would talk about things like embodying the values through particular like comparisons, like in an SAT, where it would be like, you know, collaboration over competition, you know, or like communication over resentment, or whatever it is, where you kind of saying we're not dictating these things, but our general guiding principle is when we are in a situation, we're going to look for this versus this. Sustainability versus wastefulness, right? And so then when you're approaching something like, hey, there's a co-working space across. Oh yeah, okay. Thanks, Jen. I know you had a hard stop. Thanks. When you're approaching something like a co-working space opened across the street, do we consider them competition or do we try to make friends? Well, you say if I've made a guiding principle of collaboration over competition, then let me try to lean towards the collaboration attitude, reach out, be friendly, say, hey, I see you're opening a co-working space. I run a co-working space. Maybe we can be friends. Maybe there's ways we can support each other. Maybe not, but let's give it a try. Let's meet for a beer, see if we can be friends. And that leads to so much possibility, a constellation of positive possibility. So anyway, I got into a rant on this, but I think there's a lot that we can do when it comes to this, and would be very interested to explore that more in a further conversation. But I know we're a little bit over time. I know a few folks had to drop off, but wanted to thank both of you for joining. I wanted to welcome you again, John, and looking forward to us having our one-on-one.
Same here. Have a good day.
All right, cool. All right, sounds good, John. Thank you. And Justin, keep up the great work over there. Keep me posted on how it goes.
Yeah, and I might email you separately, just as you the creator of Codivation. And actually, if you even have just a couple minutes, it's the last series of Codivation was very powerful. Like, everybody in the world is going through this just kind of gut wrenching, emotional time, and so there was people like tearing up and like almost crying in some of these Codivation sessions, and people really connected with it. But when we went, we took a break, and then we said, okay, we're going to do Codivation again. And I reached out to all the same people that said they got so much out of it. And I got this overwhelming sense that people were just really burnt out on trying to accomplish. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts. It looks like you have to go, but maybe just something to noodle on. We could email about it, on something that has that same level of engagement without the like, hey, let's accomplish, let's do things, let's, because I feel like everybody's been sprinting a marathon, for the last
That's
6 months.
It's a great question. It's something I would like to think about more. It probably speaks to one of my own biases as a very productivity focused New Yorker, accomplishment oriented New Yorker. But I would say that there's generally probably a direction you can go around celebration and appreciation that we don't even need to focus on accomplishment. Let's focus on gratitude. Let's focus on positivity, attitude related stuff, and maybe organizing around committing to share our rituals and our habits around that. Cultivating joyousness, and just being people together.
Yeah.
My friend Alex in Philly, who runs Indie Hall, has this. They have this kind of sub channel where there's a website where it's like a group YouTube playlist, so people can just dump on YouTube videos into a shared playlist, and it just plays it on loop as if it's a TV station. So you could just pop onto this page, and it's just always playing a video based on this playlist that everybody's compiled. So it's this like ridiculously random, incredibly diverse set of videos that everyone's queued up for laughs and for education and whatever. And then there's just a little chat box on the side. And so they have a periodic, like, let's hang out and watch internet together. And it's wonderful. And I could try to find you the link for what that service is in case you're curious. I have a feeling you're curious about stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But you know what I mean? Just like going that more that direction.
All right, and I'll shoot you an email in case if you noodle on, and if there's any other ideas you come up with. I'm going to be away from cell phone reception for the next week, but
okay.
I'll definitely be here on Monday. So
okay, sounds good. Yeah, I just sent in the chat. I think it's called Cytube, cytu.be.
So, oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Give it a look.
Hey, thanks, Tony.
Yeah, you got it. Good to see you, Justin. Take care.